Hello, everyone, and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett, and I'm your host this evening as Rangers season is finally over. We've been counting down to this day for what feels like quite a long time now, but we can finally say the 2024-2025 season is over for Rangers, and thank God for that. I'm joined tonight by JB and Craig Hughes, and we'll do a bit of a season review in a little bit, but we're going to start off first of all with the news that came out tonight from Rangers around Barry Ferguson's confirmed departure from Rangers. JB, I'll start with yourself on that one. To me, it was news that I expected. There wasn't anything different from that. I think I started to wonder a little bit going by his rhetoric and his interviews and the fact he was saying there was still a chance and all of that. But I didn't really expect for him to be in the running for the job. Is how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think first of all, if we go back to the appointment when it was kind of done, it was almost a case of, what's this going to bring? And I think everybody just had their head in hands at first, and then you settle down a little bit and you go, you know what, this could work in a weird kind of way. Obviously, one thing we've been missing for years, it feels like, is that bit of passion. We've had some fantastic, talented coaches. I think there's no denying that. We've been successful in other places, but have you had that someone that was beating the chest and really getting the players up for it? Now, I will put my hands up and say I've probably been a bit guilty of saying I don't think you need a lot in Scottish football. If you've got somebody in there that can motivate and get players playing for you, if you've got better players, the theory, you should win more games. But I think what Barry's done, he's come in and he's done himself proud, I think, in terms of the media and the way he's conducted himself. I think he's come into with a group of players who are, I've said it a few times on pods and said it privately, I think we've got a real selfish group of players who really decide when they switch it on and off. And I think you've even seen it himself. He's been tearing his hair out with that. So I think weighing all the things up, I think, again, you thank him for what he's done. I think, as I say, a lot of people, he's their hero, depending on what generation you come through. He's been a fantastic player, perfect clubman, captain, always spoke well about us. And yeah, so he's come in and given us some great memories as well. So in terms of, you look at some of his European results, the big one at Parkhead, I think you almost felt as if when the players were crossing the line, there was effort going in, if nothing else. I think what this group of players have showed is there's not a lot of ability at times when we need it, and certainly domestically. But all in all, I said a little bit of a panic. Was it yesterday or this morning?
Yeah.
I thought he's going to get this job here. We're going to give him a year. We're going to get the new owners in, and we're just going to see how it goes. Which was worrying me, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I do think we need a wee bit more. But no, massive. You can only thank him for what he's done. League was gone by the time he come in. We were out the cups. And he didn't disgrace us in Europe at all, and a good win away of their place as well. So all in all, he's thank him, and we move on.
Yeah, I think my fear was actually coming from your messages, JB. To be honest, I think they just that wee niggling doubt in the back of my head was building and building as you were sending more and more of your thoughts into the chat. But I think I have to agree with you in terms of Barry Ferguson and all the coaching staff kind of stepped into the breach at a time where there wasn't long left to go of the season. I don't think anyone would have really taken on the mantle of, can you see this through to the end of the season, and then there's no guarantee you're getting a job after it. We'd kind of needed someone like Barry Ferguson to come in and take hold of the reins. I think it was an interesting test, I think, for what you said, JB, in terms of, can a team be transformed by just someone who, putting in air quotes, but who gets Rangers and who just has that motivational manner around them. Could a team be transformed by that? For me, the answer was no. I think pretty early on it was clear that that wasn't the case, and we need so much more than that in a manager. But he did step into the breach when no one else would, and I think he has to be thanked for that, because he's got us to this stage. And like you said, he's given us some memories along the way. The night against Fenerbahce, the win away at Parkhead, as you say, those are two two moments in a lot of darkness for Rangers this season. So yeah, absolutely. Craig, were you surprised that he kept publicly talking about there being a chance?
I wouldn't say kind of knowing what he was, knowing what he was like as a player, very determined and, believes in himself. You have to have that kind of character to think of the Rangers team he broke into back in the day. If someone told him when he was young, you'll never make it at Rangers, it was a pretty wild, a pretty big, high bar he achieved to get into that squad, to be captain as such a. So he always had that belief in himself. So I wasn't really surprised that he kept talking himself up, and I think he was kind of caught in recently because he's not really. He's probably been a bit in limbo himself. He's probably been stuck between playing a little bit of game in the media and not giving too much away, without talking himself up too much. So I think he's probably had a difficult balance to strike in that sense. So I'm not surprised. I expected him to come in and give it his all, and I did expect him to want the job, full time. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that ambition and drive. And JB said, well, all we can do is thank him for the work that he put in and the effort. But no, I'm not surprised that he thought he was in with a chance. I think in recent press conferences, I think we've seen a different side. I think he has, without admitting it. I think he's known that he wasn't getting the job. So I think it's been a little bit different recently. But no, I can't blame him for getting a couple of big results and being ambitious.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's. I think everyone's going to go into that job. We spoke about it on the podcast when he was appointed. You're going to go into that job and think, if I do a good job here, then I'm going to have a chance of getting it full time. And as you say, he's a man that has confidence in himself. He's a man that's going to back himself. And that, JB, how did you, obviously the performance, 12 games in charge, 4 wins, 4 draws, 4 defeats, if I remember correctly. 20 goals scored, 21 goals conceded. How did you assess his performance as manager?
Yeah, I think one thing he did show is he would mix it up, and I think that was one of the big frustrations we had under Clement. I think we watched. I still go back to that Motherwell game at Ibrox. If we hadn't lost that Motherwell game at Ibrox under Clement, when things were going so well, where he seemed to, he had a formula that was just working, and then whatever happened that day just spooked him, and the whole thing just got ripped up. I've said this on a few pods. So one thing that Barry showed was he could tweak it, and no more so than when we went to Fenerbahce away early doors. I think the Kilmarnock game kind of took care of itself in the fact that I think on the night that man motivation at half time was kind of probably what they needed to go, oh, who's this fella? Right, we've got to go and give a little bit here. But then, unfortunately, the Motherwell game came a couple of days later, and it's almost just, it was same old. We slipped back into the same habits. But then Fenerbahce, he showed he was switched on. Him and the coaching team kind of showed, okay, we're going to find a system here that's going to frustrate these, and we're going to catch them on the break. But when we're in possession, we're going to be really clever. We scored some fantastic goals on the night, and don't get me wrong, you can't walk away from what Clement kind of done in Europe as well, as for all of his faults, and there was many of them, which I'm sure we could get into. But I think in terms of in Europe, we were a different animal, and that really showed. But I think he's gone in there. He's some of the results were really frustrating. I think as we started to get towards the tail end, ran through a little period where he obviously had one eye on Bilbao. So players were getting rested for minutes and different bits and bobs. But I think one thing that hopefully falls away from memory over time, I don't think he set us up very well for next season, which I think is going to be a big frustration of mine. One, I say you can't thank him enough for the job that he's done. Now, I get it if the players aren't doing it in training, but I don't think he done himself any favours by probably not unleashing a few and just going, right, I'm seeing this, let them see that. Because these are the guys that are renewing the season tickets. These are the people that travel up and down the country. If you go out there and don't perform for them, they'll let you know about it. Not having Iggerman lead the line for a handful of games before the end of the season. Just a couple of little real tricky bits for me that I go, oh, could that not have been handled a little bit better? But yeah, I say we touched on it a few times. Is the squad that he was working with built to play in Scottish football? I think we can all agree it's not. You go through the squad, obviously this is before your calamity errors that he was having to manage with Butland when obviously he first come in. But you got the likes of Robin Proper, as I said, is meant to be one of your spine if you centre half, one of your experienced guys kicking about. Diamandi domestically again in certain games is a massive risk. Shows real glimpses of quality, and I think he will go on to be a good player. Will he go on to be a good player for us domestically? I'm not too sure. Only because I don't know what his full-time role is. But and then as you work through the team, there's just a couple of bits where you've gone, why have you done that? Lawrence is the one, and I'm a massive fan of Tom Lawrence. Having known what he's gone through in terms of off the pitch with injuries and stuff. I've got a couple of pals that are quite close to Tom, as I've told you a few times. And I know that he really loved the club. He fell in love with it. He loved playing for us. Had a couple of horror injuries, some really poorly managed by the club as well. So I think it's one of them where you.
I think we've lost JB's sound a little bit there.
We move on.
I don't know if you muted yourself there, JB, or something, but we lost your sound for a couple of seconds.
No, someone's just tried to phone me. But who should be watching the pod instead of phoning me? So someone on the wind up.
Yeah, fair. Craig, I saw you nodding along when JB was talking about Barry Ferguson didn't really set us up for next season well with the players that we're potentially a little bit unsure about, or a little bit not sure if they've got the quality to take the step up consistently. Would that be right?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I did want to see the team kind of a good few changes more, and to see the likes of Egerman through the middle, to see a bit more of the young guys. I want to see Bailey Rice get more game time than he did. Things like that. Again, I'm not totally, bashing on Barry Ferguson. He was asked to tide things over to the end of the season. He probably thought, I've got to, he's obviously, as I said before, he was aiming for getting a job, so he was doing the best he could to get results. And I think it haunted him how bad the record was at Ibrox, especially recently. So I think that was on his mind. So I'm not wanting to be overly critical of him, but yeah, I would agree with JB in that sense that I would have liked to see a bit more I think it went from one extreme to another, because I'm saying I want to see a more experimental team and trying a few different things, but he had a couple of games thrown in there where it was the opposite, like the Aberdeen game away, where it was totally experimental. It was, the team looked as if it had been picked at a tombola. But I think, it was my frustration really that you didn't see more of likes of Bailey Rice and, maybe Finlay Curtis. As I said, I respect that he sees these guys in training every day. You've got to earn your place. But, I'd have liked to see, a bit more of what we could expect to see next season, or if we could expect to see them playing. I think we're kind of in the dark on a few in that sense.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Part of me kind of half expected Barry Ferguson to be part of the new setup in some way. I wasn't quite sure where he would fit, and I don't know if his confidence in his own ability as a manager, maybe seeing the move from being an interim manager to a assistant coach or something like that would be too much of not a fall from grace for him, but just a bit of a step down, and he wouldn't quite be as into it as he thought he would be. Craig, was that something? Can you understand why he's not part of the setup, perhaps?
I can't understand. I mean, Barry's always been a kind of, quite outspoken, a leader, very, very honest. And to be honest with you, it would need to be the right type of manager coming in where he fits into that structure. Yeah, you can have your voice, but you need to be respectful. This is the main man. It just needs to be the right dynamics. And I think with a lot of managers, that wouldn't be the case, and I'm not saying he would have been disruptive in any way or argumentative in that sense, but it just needs to be the right mix. You can't just say, oh, he knows the club, he's got good ideas, let's make him a number two. It needs to be fit in with what the new manager's like. So I'm not surprised for now they're kind of ruling it out. That's not to say that he can't have some role to play in the future or anything like that, but I think just shoehorning him into a new team just because he's done, pretty well, he's done us a good turn, is probably not the right way to go. Now, there's no doubt Barry Ferguson's experience of Rangers, his knowledge of Rangers and his passion for the club is first class, and he knows exactly what's required. But I just feel it's not as simple as just saying those factors mean that he should be in a a new coaching setup. It just depends on what their ideas and where they want to take the club is.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. Speaking of the new manager, I guess the announcement, JB, tonight that Barry Ferguson wouldn't be getting the job suggests that they are narrowing in on a really short list of candidates. I've seen some rumours on social media that the club are going to be meeting some potential candidates for the new managerial for the new manager slot this week. Rumours it's either 2 or 3 candidates, and some even suggested that a manager could be announced by the end of this week. That seems a bit ambitious if the club are meeting a couple of them at points this week, but there are some suggestions that it could be as quick as that. Are you encouraged by those suggestions, I guess, is the best way to put it, that we're well down the road and there's a couple of candidates that are real front runners?
Yeah, I'm encouraged, but I'm petrified at the same time. Only because I don't think there's an outstanding candidate. I think there's it does feel as if even as fans we're going to have to go through a bit of a learning model. I think everyone you speak to and everyone you hear about now doesn't sound like we're going to go for a established manager as someone who you could look at and go, he's going to go in there and get a grip of things. He's going to lean on his experience. That's definitely not what doesn't look like we're targeting. We're going to be targeting someone that is going to come in probably early in their managerial career, hopefully a really good coach, and we'll be looking to get the best out of the group of players that he's got. I don't think this manager is going to have as much say in signings. I think the signings will be of a profile with a view to with a transfer strategy sitting there. I think we've been left behind in the dark ages, unfortunately, for too long because we've chased that instant success. Now, I think we were all hoping that this year was going to be a bit of a building year and we run them close. But I think as the season's kind of unravelled, I think we've gone too far the other way. On a few reasons. One, I don't think we've identified players that will suit the domestic game. So if you look at your Bezramis, your Jeff Dees to a lesser extent, he's still young enough. Cortez, again, touched on earlier, Diamandi. There's a handful of guys there that have come in recently and you go, are these ready for Scottish football? I don't think so. Now, maybe next year could be their year. I do think we need to go out and maybe get 2 or 3 players. I'm not going to say that know what it's all about because you need a little bit more than that. But 2 or 3 players that you can look at and go, they seem like really smart signings, whether it's because of previous experience or whether it's because of previous ability. Even if it's somebody that we need to bring in, like a Cherney type whose careers maybe just pause for a little bit, but you go, you know what? If we could reignite them, then we do that. You don't want to do that en masse, but if you can get 2 or 3 in that can then kick on to that next level, then that's kind of what we need to be. But in terms of the manager, it's going to be different for us. I think we're going to hear a lot of buzzwords. We're going to hear a lot of the modern stuff that we probably doesn't come natural. We want to hear about how they're battling and how they're flying into 50-50s and the players are up for it and everything else. I think it's going to be a lot more structured and just brought into modern football. I don't think we'll like every element of it. But as always, we've just got to trust that the people making the decisions are the right ones. I do feel as if we've got football people making decisions now, as opposed to previous people in the past who've maybe done it for their own benefit or their own ego. So yeah, let's hope it's exciting times ahead. But this week should hopefully be interesting because with any new manager will come a new link of player, whether that be 49ers money or whether it be maybe 1 or 2 players that these guys have worked with in the past. So yeah, watch this space. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, before I come get your thoughts, Craig, on that, I just want to put up this comment by David Glendinning. He says, "Glad's been having a hard time with my grandson's health at the present time. I'd like to thank all the Rangers pods for taking a mind off it for hours. To you all, thanks. Keep up the good work." Well, David, thank you very much, firstly, for listening, and from everyone at TI. I hope your grandson is on the mend, and we'll be back to good health soon. But thank you very much for listening, and glad we can help out at this difficult time. Craig, just on something JB was saying there around the manager may not have as much say in signings as a previous manager has had. We can maybe see the start of that, I guess, with some of the signing rumours there have been this week and how far down the road they seem to be. I think Umar Kamara from PSG, their under-19 captain, was one that came out the other night, kind of out the blue. I think it wasn't one that had been suggested or spoken about beforehand. Some people comparing him to Continenciala in terms of the level and that side of things. To be honest, I couldn't tell you much about him or if that's the case, or if he's pushing higher more quickly towards the first team than that. We've also seen Cameron Burgess from Ipswich, the centre half, rumoured as well. And there's one Fujimoto who is loads of people in the comments are talking about, but I haven't seen anything around that as yet prior to coming on the pod. Do you think I guess we've got to get moving quickly to be ready for the Champions League qualifiers with the amount of an overhaul there's going to have to be this summer? But how do you feel about that potentially happening before a managerial candidate has been appointed and then given the final yes or no on potential signings?
Yeah, I think it kind of had to happen just with the timing. We'd have had to been working on targets. Now, I think similar happened when Gerrard was announced before. I think we had McGregor and Arfield already, all but agreed. He got the final say on it, but the work was already done. So I would guess it's fairly similar just now. I agree that the manager will not be the be-all and end-all in terms of, transfers, but he will, have a say. And, he will probably have the final say. It'll be a collective kind of, effort on it. So I would think we're quite far down the line with a few signings. I would think before they get announced or anything like that, I think a new manager will get some sort of say whether he wants to cancel at the 11th hour or, he's happy to go ahead with them. I'm just happier that there is now a structure in place because, I said that a while ago, if we'd brought in Ancelotti Senior instead of Clement, I don't think he was succeeded because we never had any structure in place. It was the modern system. It should be, a few people responsible for signings and, they work together on it with the manager working with the director of football and with the scouting department. So I'm not surprised that work started. Again, it would be impossible for us to go say we appoint a new manager next week, right? Let's get started on who we're going to sign. Well, most of them are already, speaking to clubs or already agreed. So I'm not shocked it started. I think the final say will, the manager will play a part in, but I'm quite happy to hear, work started to be done and the started rumours come out. As well, the ones, sorry, I forgot his name, the younger defender that you kind of linked to Enciala. I think signings like that, I think will be, the manager doesn't really need the final say on that and promising, young players. It can be, through the academy and set up that depending on where they're coming in. But yeah, I think it's good that the work's going ahead and we can see things moving in the right direction already. Because before you know it, is those Champions League qualifiers.
Absolutely. I think Kamara's actually from PSG. I think he's actually a right winger who can play up front or left wing. So I think
we'll probably play him right back. That's right.
But yes, it'll be interesting to see how that progresses and how quickly more signings progress and players going the other way as well in terms of out the door as soon as a new manager is finally appointed. JB this week, the club unveiled it's the new home top, which a lot of people really like. First one under the Umbro partnership through Castore, which is a nice throwback as well. The video I thought Rangers did on social media was really good in terms of that connection and that emotional side of the game and people obviously encouraging people to make that emotional purchase of the new home top. I thought it was really nice. I thought it incorporated a lot of the features from the nicer home tops, particularly the collar. I think the collar is the one that people always talk about. If it's the right design, the collar really works. What did you make of the new home top?
Yeah, I thought it was similar to you. I thought it was really nice. I think obviously you'd seen I don't think what helps is the concept kits that you see because some of them are absolute crackers and you think, oh, why can't it just be that? But no, I think it's as good as any of the concept I've seen from an Umbro or Castore perspective. I think you touched on it there. I thought the video was classy, but it's easy to do these things, isn't it? It would just be nice if we were doing these things with a trophy in the shot, but unfortunately too many years going by now where as I say, we're talking about the past far too much. We need to really start to look at modern success, and that's something that we've just been starved of, just because of really poor decisions, both on and off the pitch. So, yeah, I think it's a really nice kit, and the white one that's been rumoured as well, I think is the crystal clear. That's going to be the away one, and then the third one, which I think will be an interesting one as well. So yeah, I would have liked probably Raskin and Hamza to probably be the two guys modelling it. I think these guys would have potentially give us that little bit of hope, that almost a case of right, it's a new era. We've got two really talented lads there who are going to launch the kit. But as always, Tav manages to get himself in, doesn't he? And yeah, so who knows whether that's a same old, but let's hope for a little bit of change and a little bit of freshness as we go into the new season.
Absolutely. Well, the brand new kit is on sale now, and we are lucky enough to have a brand new Rangers home top to give away to one lucky subscriber to the TII podcast on our YouTube channel. So all you need to do to enter is subscribe. We'll pick a winner. Deadline for entry through subscription to TII YouTube channel is 11:59 p.m. on Friday, 23rd of May. We'll pick a winner and we'll announce it on our X channel after that, to the one lucky winner. So make sure you subscribed. You'll be in with a chance to win a new Rangers home top, and it's a nice way to start the summer and look ahead to the future. But before we start looking ahead to the future, let's look back over a season that was. Safe to say it's not one that will live long in the memory for many of us, if any at all. Craig, where do you start with this? What are your overall thoughts and feelings about the season that's gone?
I think I came into the season with low expectations, to be honest with you, but somehow, they didn't meet those, low expectations. They were even worse than I thought. I think it was just a terrible season from start to finish. Starting off at Hampden, and the communication around that just put us all on a bit of a downer. We were looking at a squad. I think for the first time, I've not really known of any Rangers fans thinking that we could win the league before a ball's kicked. Nobody really had any of that optimism. We just started off negatively, and it just, we had the odd performance, but I don't think anybody really believed, oh, we're onto something, we've turned a corner here. It was just constant kind of negatives. I mean, summed up by the likes of the Queen's Park defeat, humiliation there, miles behind Celtic. And I think I could have accepted, not that I could have accepted a season like that, but I could have accepted a season where we sort of rebuild if I could see real progress. And I think we were all the same. We all were, pretty realistic enough to know where we are at the start of the season. But the fact we're now finishing a season and take away the takeover talk, the club has not progressed in any way, shape or form. We went back the way from a really poor position, to be honest. So it's hard to take any positives, to be honest, from that season, apart from the fact it's done and we get to move on to a new chapter, to be honest.
JB, Craig's right in terms of the expectations at the start of the season being low. I don't remember many people seeing us go into the season expecting us to win the league. I don't see many people at that stage. It felt like we'd kind of done a little bit of a rebuild, but not done much of one. We obviously Craig said there, sorry, that we didn't meet even the low expectations that he had. What do you think? Where did it go wrong? I guess at the start of the season, was it just that balance of the squad, the kind of lack of a serious level of investment in a rebuild that we potentially thought was going to be bigger than it ended up being?
Yeah, I was just checking the clock then, see it's past 9 o'clock. We can start swearing now, can't we? No, I think before a ball was kicked, the whole thing was a shambles. Pre-season was just all over the place. Playing Ajax on a training pitch and Birmingham away, the team just looked so disjointed, absolutely all over the place. It was one of the best travelling supports I've seen. We travelled with Rangers, but one of the worst performances I've ever seen on a football pitch. It was just, I remember looking at Danilo going, what's up with him? He's forgot how to run. He's forgot how to be a footballer. And then there was other players that were given kind of a bit of a chance that you've been going, right, go on, go and show what you can do. And guys just did not look interested. And it was. And then Union Berlin we played? Was it 4-4 or something? And then you thought, oh, this might be an interesting season here. We might be setting up for loads of goals. And then all of a sudden the Hearts game was upon us. And I think coming out of that, we were almost like, well, at least we never got beat. And that if that was our mindset from the start of the season, it was almost a case of we'd resigned ourselves already, which we should never be doing. And I think I think Clement on the day almost talked as if it was a really good result and a really good start. And you go, and mate, it's not. And then you've got all the sports science stuff as the season's gone on. And then all the sports science stuff, remember, kicked off because Robin Proper couldn't play because he hadn't unpacked his IKEA gear and that. In a European game, Cheney had a blinder against, was it Motherwell at Hampden, and then was rested against Kiev. I think the Hampden thing, as bad as it was, we can't use that as an excuse for our league form. But one thing it did do, I think it just bluted the fans in terms of just not necessarily the love of the club, because that's always there, but just almost that passion to be getting behind something, because you felt as if the club weren't getting behind anything. And then I don't think we supported the manager enough going into the Champions League qualifiers. That should have been. I think they thought we would get past Kiev quite comfortably, and then all of a sudden Kiev beat somebody else. They whacked someone. I can't remember who it was now, and it was like, oh wait, these actually maybe are quite good. But then if you look back over the two legs, they were crap. So that then getting knocked out by them just again reset the tone, right? We've missed out on the Champions League, so there's going to be less money. So we're just going to need to deal with what we've got. And then that was it then. And then it just over the season, it just started to unravel. Craig touched on some of the really low points throughout the season, but I think the season was kind of over before it started. And out with a few highlights, good few European highlights, which cost me an absolute fortune this year because we were on that much of a little bit of momentum, and I felt as if if it didn't go, I didn't want to be missing out on a good European night. So yeah, and then you throw in the Old Firm games where again couple of decent performances in them. But cup competitions were an absolute write-off. Obviously unlucky in the final, and who knows if that one had gone our way that day, do things start to turn a little bit and do you get a little bit of momentum? But I just felt as if we never had any momentum at all at any point of the season. Didn't even get the new manager bounce, did we, for momentum to at least kid us that we had something there to work with. So yeah, all in all, really disappointing. And as Craig touched on, we didn't have a lot of expectations going into the season, but I don't think anyone thought it'd be that bad.
Yeah, JB's fair fire through all my talking points there for the remainder of the podcast.
See you next season, guys.
But we'll go into it in a bit more depth. I think in terms of the new manager bounce and stuff, I'm not sure by the time the change was actually made, I'm not sure that was ever going to come. I also think that I'm also of the view that had we won that League Cup final, Clement would still be our manager at this moment in time. I don't think he would have gone even with the Queen's Park result. I just think how the board handled that, he would still be our manager just now. But Craig, I just want to go a bit deeper into one of the points JB raised around Hampden. Obviously, it feels like a lifetime ago that we were playing at Hampden. It doesn't even feel like it should have been sort of this season. But how big an issue was starting a season away from Ibrox and being at Hampden? JB said it was more of an issue in European games versus the domestic games. What were your thoughts on that and how big an impact that had?
Yeah, I think you've got to agree with that. It was a bigger issue in the domestic game, in the sort of European. I think we won. Did we win all our league games there? Yeah. I think that two issues on us. I mean, first of all, for the fans, for the way they were feeling, we certainly felt as if it wasn't communicated with us. That it could have been handled a lot better in that sense. It made us, we're already low on expectations, but it made us a little bit annoyed about, going to watch home games where that should be, even when we're not at our best, it should be, you're buzzing to get to the first league game of the season. It just deflated everybody so much. I think for the European games, it was massive. Kiev, to play them at a half empty, as I said, fans were upset. They ended up not buying tickets for that game. Half empty Hampden. we were relying on a full Ibrox in those qualifiers, and that's what we'll rely on this year, a full Ibrox, rolling the team on and making it intimidating for other teams. That totally took that out for the Dynamo Kiev game. That made it quite a comfortable atmosphere for them to play in. So it totally changed it as well, just being a comfortable place for players to play as well. Players are used to their home surroundings, they're used to the size and dimension of the pitch, the stands, the dressing rooms, everything about it. So without making excuses, again, we're not blaming our full season on that, but it was just a horrible way to start it and not making Champions League. I think I think the board were just hoping that somehow we would get in the Champions League and it would solve kind of any money problems and mean we could build on the squad a little bit. When that didn't happen, that was our last kind of Hail Mary for the season, and it didn't happen, and it just went on to a downward spiral of events. But I think it just started the season off on a massively negative tone.
Yeah, JB, how big that Champions League qualifier against Dynamo Kiev? We seemed to struggle. I mean, the Jeffy red card at Hampden kind of felt like it killed us, but we seemed to struggle against them at that stage. And you were right; they beat someone quite comprehensively in the round before, and we made us a bit wary about them. But then they went into the Europa League and finished bottom of the table with 0 points, and you're kind of looking at that going, we should have done much better in those 2 legs. I don't even feel like we can necessarily say it came too early for us, because we were into August by that point, and the season, I think we'd already played Hearts, if I'm remembering correctly, before we played the first leg. But how big not only missing out on Champions League football, but missing out on that £5 million bonus there was for getting to the next round, to the playoff round. How big a moment was that result in terms of the outlook for our season?
Yeah, because I think what it done, that loss of revenue kind of just, I think it probably knocked back a few signings. So if you imagine the start of the season, they probably got a list and gone, right, if we get through this game, we could go and get them 2 maybe. And then if we get through that one, then we can go and get them 2 or 3. And I think it just kind of created this perfect storm of nonsense in terms of what was to come for the kind of weeks ahead. I think as fans, it knocked us. I remember just sitting there going, right, what's the point? So early on to have such a big disappointment. It was slightly different if you remember the Malmo game. That kind of did feel as if that came too soon for us. We weren't obviously that long out of COVID and everything else, so everyone was kind of like, okay, cool, that's not ideal, but let's go again. And I'm not saying we'd have got into the Champions League and competed, because you look at the level jump up. But one thing this group of players did prove was, in European football against teams that you could argue were better than them, that's when we did see the best of them. So who knows what they'd have done. And we wouldn't have been going into any games with Ben Davis and James Sands as centre half. So who knows, we might have had some chance. But I think in terms of that, yeah, I just think it just rocked the boat. Financially, I say definite. I think we would have had might have seen a slightly different signing profile. It then forced us to then go into the transfer deadline day and just panic. And I think that was seen with a couple of the signings that come in. They felt like panic times at the time, that you go, oh, it could work because of previous experience and stuff. But yeah, it just felt as if we were throwing things against the dartboard and just hoping that something would stick. But yeah, we'll hopefully, and again, that word again, hope, we're a bit more set up for the Champions League qualifiers this year. Is this team at the moment ready to go into a Champions League qualifier? I really don't think it is. Hence the reason why I think we can't afford to have too many project players come in, unless we're bringing in a couple more Hamzas. I don't think we can bring guys in that we're going to. No one's going to guarantee we'll get through the qualifiers. But one thing we have to do is bring 2 or 3 players that can just walk straight in and go, right, I can compete at this level. I'm not saying we're going to go and sign Champions League winners or anything ridiculous, but we need players that can go in there and compete from day one, and just hope that we can get a bit of momentum early doors. Because without that momentum, all you're doing is giving hope to everyone round about. Yeah, we give Aberdeen hope, we give them hope, and yeah, it was just disappointing all round.
Yeah, I think it's hard to disagree with that. We won't we won't go into every moment that there was this season. We're just going to drop into a few and maybe give a bit of a different perspective on them. But Craig, one moment that stuck out to me when I was thinking back over the season was when we beat St Johnstone 2-0 in the League Cup at Hampden, and then Fleet Cumont made the full squad go over to the Union Bears, and they did that sort of jumping up and down in front of them after a bit of a routine 2-0 win midweek in the League Cup. Looking back on that, is it still as bewildering to you now as it was at that time, or is it something that actually you can see what he was trying to do in that moment?
It makes me absolutely cringe seeing that footage pop up, and it pops up on Twitter from time to time. I don't necessarily blame Clement, because I think it's a European thing, going to the fans and doing that full jump about it, but it's not for us. So when we see us beating St Johnstone, and again a pretty empty Hampden, and doing that, celebrating as if we've won the cup, that kind of. I think his idea was about unity with the supporters and all that. I think he had the right intentions, but it was absolutely cringeworthy, and it kind of summed up, where the standards of pretty much fallen in that side of things. I think I said it to my mate last week. As left as full time went, I want to see the players walk around the pitch at the end of a season holding the trophy. Otherwise, I'm not interested anymore. These lap of honours and acknowledging the fans. We want to see trophies. We don't want any gimmicks. We don't want all that nonsense. So again, I don't fully blame Clement for that one, but I think it just summed up where we are as a club.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think we'll just move on from that one before we get too far down that rabbit hole. But JB, the week that I felt like it got away from is, I felt like we were kind of hanging in there until Christmas. Around the Christmas time, Celtic dropped some points, and it felt like we'll win the Old Firm game at New Year, and we're back in the title race, and we're back in with a shout, and we've not been playing the best, but we're there, and we've got a January transfer window coming up, and we can push on from there. The week that absolutely killed us, in my opinion, was that between Christmas and New Year, Motherwell and St Mirren. Those two games absolutely annihilated any hope that we could have had of a title race. Would you agree with that, and how demoralising was that, especially at that time of year when you're supposed to be enjoying time off work and you're supposed to be enjoying watching football and all that sort of stuff? But how demoralising was that, and how big an impact do you think that particular week had on our season?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go back through the years, but I bet you don't see many teams win a league. Certainly up in Scotland, if they do have a week like that, because it just goes to show, right? You might get a bloody nose on one, but you don't go and do it again. Do you know what I mean? And let's have it right. The opposition that we're up against isn't great, so therefore you should win more games than you lose. So if you just take 1 week in isolation, then there you go. You've had you've had a bloody nose, but you bounce back the next week, right? Boom. This Rangers team kind of felt to me, if we get a bloody nose, it could last 6 weeks. Do you know what I mean? And that's kind of the concern. I think that run that you just spoke about then, from memory, there was a lot of fixtures in and around the time, wasn't it? Because I think we had European games. Was that in and around the Tottenham game? We had the cup final was just before Christmas, and then St Mirren Motherwell. Was it Hibs away? I've got in my head. Where was that when Hamza scored?
Hamza won. Yeah.
Hamza scored 3, and then maybe should have scored another. So that was 3-3, and then I think we followed that up with Dundee away. I think we drew 1-1. Was that a midweek? So it was 4 games that we kind of dropped points in. I think we might have beat Celtic in between it and New Year. So again, that masked a lot. But I mean, there's an example of this team: 1 win in 5 domestic games. The league's gone. Do you know what I mean? Forget it, because all you've done, you've fed other teams hope. Now, if Aberdeen had carried on with a bit of momentum, this Rangers team would have collapsed even further. I've got no doubt in my mind that extra pressure, I think, would have been there for all to see, because you'd have almost been a case of, you're not performing to catch them. And I think the way Clement's mindset was, and the club's mindset, would have been, we're not ready to compete for the league this year, but let's at least try and compete with them, Aberdeen. And if that's the standard, then we should just shut the doors now, because they're not very good. Do you know what I mean? And we proved that we've proved that from on time to time, and they've proved it on time to time. So yeah, I think we can't afford to have weeks like that. Michael Beale had weeks like that. Van Bronk had weeks like that. And when you have 2 or 3 results in a short pace of time, there's unfortunately there's no coming back. And I know, and that's only because such of a high bar that we've got. You can smell it sometimes. You just kind of go, "Oh, something's not right here." And again, what you could kind of look at this group of players, and we've probably said it 3 or 4 times already tonight, in terms of, have we got players built to win the Scottish Premier League? I think we've got talent, but have we got players to win built to win the Scottish Premier League? And it's there for all to see that we haven't. So yeah, I think that's something that needs to be addressed. Now, hopefully, we might have a handful of players there that take massive learnings. So if you look at Nico Raskin, if Nico Raskin continues the form that he's got, Hamza Egerman, Jefty, I think has got potential, albeit some absolute horror shows in between. But these are really young lads who should be on the up. And obviously one thing we haven't spoken about this season is the horrific injuries. Again, I think we probably skipped over it because we're conditioned now to just having so many horrific injuries. I think out with probably Tav and Dessers, I think every other players that had 3 months out at some point, with one reason or another. So, yeah, I think weeks like that just don't help at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to gloss over the Queen's Park defeat. I'll acknowledge that it happened, but I'm not going to delve any deeper into it than that one. We all know how bad that was. But Craig, as soon as that happened, the people, if anyone was still on the fence about Fleet Clement at that stage, he was fully gone in the minds of pretty much every Rangers fan by that stage. But he clung on to his job for a few weeks after that. Do you feel like we stuck with Clement too long for it to make any difference this season?
Yeah, I think we did. I think I think we had all seen probably around that Christmas period where the results, after Old Firm weren't going our way. I think around then we'd started to go, right, like, we got the wee lift just before Christmas. I think the Tottenham game and the cup final was a good performance. Wasn't a victory in the end, but we were seeing something to kind of cling on to. After that, it kind of fell away. I think if we'd, obviously if we'd made the decision earlier, you might have been talking about maybe a Scottish Cup, if we'd made the move a little bit earlier. But again, I think by that point, I think the club was focused on big changes are coming in summer. Let's just see it out to the end. And I think that was our goal. I think everyone knew he wasn't the man to take us forward. And I think the club was just hoping that we could glide through it until the end of the season. And results just got so bad that they had to make the move. I think if things were different and we were in a different place, the decision would have been made earlier, would have been a lot more, I don't want to say ruthless, but a lot more, kind of decisive in that.
I think that's fair, JB. Craig's alluded there to the fact that the club kind of knew about the takeover discussions kind of being ongoing at that stage, and a lot of change was coming. Didn't really want to make any big decisions that would tie them into sort of longer term deals or contracts, or would require big changes from the new owners if the takeover was to go through. I think it was, if I remember correctly, the first sort of meetings around takeover were November time, sort of late November, early December, if I remember the timeline correctly, from when the news first came out. But discussions had been ongoing for quite a while by the time the Queen's Park result happened. How much do you think that sort of prospective takeover impacted the club this season and the sort of decision making and investment in the team as well? During, we didn't really invest in January at all. We got Rafa Fernandez, who we've seen for over 4 or 5 minutes or something like that this season. We didn't invest in the team at all in January either. How big an impact do you think the prospective takeover had on this outcome of this season for the club, and the fact we just kind of went over to the end?
Yeah, no, you touched on it there. I think the January transfer window was kind of were desperate for a spark. We were desperate something for a wee bit new. And I think the only hope we were going to get was going to be some loan players. And as she touched on Rafa Fernandez there, he's not what we needed at the time, and we've gone on to prove that. What we needed was we needed a bit of fun in the team. We needed someone that could get us off our seat. We needed a bit of pace. We needed to inject some power, and it just wasn't done. It felt as if everyone was kind of just been put on hold. That's what it now looks like from a club perspective. The dilly-dallying with Clement just kind of showed that the club was on hold. I think if you'd have asked the board at the time, can we finish the season now? I think they'd have snapped your hand off with a view to getting us through to the summer. I know there's been times where the fans are probably within the same boat as well. But that said, I think obviously Europe kept things ticking over in terms of keeping us engaged and keeping us, and obviously the hope that you can just go on and build that little bit of momentum. But that just hasn't happened. And I think as fans as well, I think we've just, as touched on there, it's just as soon as we knew that the league was out of contention, it was almost a case of, can we just get to next season? Obviously, a few highlights. You forget about stuff like this once the game kicks off on a Saturday or Sunday, or if you're at Ibrox, or if you're a European away game, you just kind of go, right, let's just focus on today. We'll worry about the future. But definitely feels as if upstairs things just massively stood still. Apart from us bringing in an assistant coach, that one was obviously just a wee bit left field. We'll just go and announce another coach just off the whim. We obviously all this stuff's going on.
And he's sticking around as well. We spoke about Barry Ferguson. He's sticking around, which is interesting.
He does seem to be the one that's survived, which is interesting. I think everything that we've heard about him seems really good. In terms of his reputation and the stuff that he's done in the game. Obviously had a really successful Morocco under-20s, was it? So again, hopefully that could open a few doors in terms of things that we've seen, because Hamza seems to have settled really well, both on and off the pitch, which I think will hopefully shine a bit of a light into that area of the world where we haven't tapped into before, because one thing's for certain, we're going to make money on that kid. I think so. Having people like him in and around, I think, will be a step forward, and is probably a step forward into the modern game as well. We're not going to, I'm convinced now, we're not going to see a 40, 50-year-old manager. I'm saying 40, like I told him 40 in a few weeks, but we're not going to see like a 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old manager coming in. It is going to be somebody potentially in their mid to late 30s, which is mortifying when you think about it. So it's having guys kicking around like him, I think will be super helpful with his knowledge. He has got a little bit of experience behind him. So yeah, I think it's watch this space with that one.
Yeah, Craig, a big part of what I think a lot of Rangers fans are looking for and expecting from the new owners once they come in is building that structure in the background, building that structure around the club that will then help support the manager and help mean that everything's up to the standard we expect. I think we all are aware and have seen and have heard stuff around the club that we know is not up to the standard you would expect for a club like Rangers. We're expecting that to change when the new owners come in. But when you look at obviously Kevin Thelwell has come in, he'll be working closely, I imagine, with Niels Coppen on the signings, and that will likely be where some of these rumours are coming from, or these early door suggestions of signings. But if you're Niels Coppen, you've had 18 months at the club, have maybe like a couple of successes from a signing perspective, but you've not set the header alight. Are you worried for your job if you're Niels Coppen? How would you rate his performance so far?
I think, well, overall, if you look at the overall recruitment, it's not been good. There's no getting away from it. I know there's been challenges. There's no doubt. He's had to deal with a lot. He's had to bring the wage bill down. He's probably had to wait for players to go before bringing others in. So there's no doubt there's been challenges. But when you just look at what you're judged on, which is the recruitment, squad's a mess. It's, as we touched on, I think it was JB made the point earlier, we've not brought in players for the Scottish League. He spoke about injuries. A lot of that comes down to, not recruiting players that are robust enough to deal with the Scottish League. You've got a defence that's all over the place. Who I think everybody would probably agree that Balogun's probably the one we trust the most, and he's coming towards his end of career and injured all the time. So the recruitment's not been good enough. And big money's been spent on the likes of Cortez, Bizrami. You can't. I don't know where you can talk from and say, it's been a great job in terms of the recruitment. Now, as I said, Nils Coppin, he's possibly suffered from what a few others have suffered, that the leadership wasn't there, and that he was probably given more responsibility than he signed up for, and probably on different terms than he signed up for at the start. So I'm not wanting to be overcritical and over the top and say he's not had his he's not had his challenges in there, but certainly when you look over the piece, the recruitment has not been good enough. There has been a couple of decent ones in there. Igaman, got to look at that and say that's a good one. Diomandi, who he brought in, I think, albeit he probably needs a bit more consistency domestically, I think everybody can see the player in there. Other one that you think you see something in is Yefty, but for me, Yefty, I don't think he'll ever be a left back in Scotland. I don't think he's robust enough defensively. I don't think he's strong enough defensively in that sense. I think he can progress a player somewhere else, but I don't think he's for us. So overall, yeah, it's been very poor. Hopefully, again, with more of a structure to the recruitment and now more people involved and more experience in there, we can see improvement. But I think overall, you've got to look at this, 18 months to say it's not been good.
Yeah, JB, just on the Nils Coppin point, obviously one of the key things that Kevin Thelwell was quoted as saying on one of the podcast interviews he did was that eventually he always wants the clubs he's working at to get to a point where the players have a certain identity that they have to meet. He spoke about being when he was at New York Red Bulls. He was like, yeah, that person's they're a really good footballer, but they're not a Red Bulls player. And you kind of, what I took from that was that's the kind of stage that we're going to try and get to at Rangers as well, in terms of we won't just sign them because they're a good player and then figure out where they fit in. We'll sign players that fit into the way we want to play, the culture, etc., etc. Another point that's been brought up in the comments actually was around Nils Coppin's not had much of a budget to play with either while he's been at Rangers, and that will significantly change this summer, hopefully, should the takeover go through. Are you comfortable with the Nils Coppin is still part of the setup as we go forward into next season at least?
Yeah, it's probably hard to say because I think we just assume as fans that's all he does is just pick players. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately for us, that's the bit that we're probably emotively really close to. We probably don't see some of the work that's being done in the background with some of the data. Well, I was going to say the data science and stuff, but in terms of the kind of the bits that go on. I mean, let's not forget with this guy as well. He was a coordinator. I think he was a coordinator and scout at PSV, and then next thing you know, he's on our board. Like it was a punt. Do you know what I mean? And you're not going to get all of your punts right. He does sound like a football man, and obviously some of the signings, the left field signings that we've seen and we've identified, we've all been excited about when they've come in, and they've all kind of made sense in terms of the profile. It's just so happened that it just hasn't worked. So if you look at your Cortez's, I mean, I don't think there was many Rangers fans complaining when he was coming back again for the second time, albeit I think everybody had a few raised eyebrows in terms of, why are we lashing 4 million on? We haven't really seen that much of him. I agree with Craig in terms of Jeffy there's something there, but whether it's going to be good enough, is he a left wing back for Rangers maybe? Was that his first assist of the season the other day? It was a cracking cross for Dessers' header, but it'd be interesting to see how many chances he's created throughout the season. Bezrami is stinking the build now, isn't he, in terms of what he's bringing to the party? So there's me saying it's not just his signings and then going through one by one all of his signings, but you know what I mean. It's that's what we will naturally as fans just lean towards. Let's just hope with Thelwell coming in, he does seem like a real proper football man, and we're bringing him to do a job that he's done in the past. I think that'll be super important. So let's hope with a good mix of some of some of the stuff that Coppen's involved in, because he's involved in that international coaching scouting meeting, isn't he? I think it was held in Mexico or something this year. I reckon he's just gone to Cancun to chin Coronas by the sounds of it. But I think in terms of him coming in, but Thelwell coming in, I think does really interest me. As you know, quite close to Everton, obviously where I live, but that's my mum's side of the family. That's who it was before. My little brother's still out. He's probably steaming after being out from 9 o'clock this morning, crying after leaving Goodison Park for the last time. So, but yeah, while the Everton fans are disappointed in the main for him to be going, I think he's got a really good reputation. I think he's got he's in obviously different budgets to us, but in terms of revenue that he's made for Everton has been really good. I think they've shown that there's some really good players in that team. They just need a little bit of a kick up the arse. He was instrumental, for example, in sending Gerard Branthwaite on loan to PSV. And look at the player that he's turned into. A lot of the Everton managers at the time wanted to keep Branthwaite at the club and just kind of let him get his way in, but he went over there and played 20 odd games for PSV and has come back and is now a 50 to 100 million pound centre half. So I'm not saying we're going to be producing them, but if you get the right football people in and around a club with a bit of potential, then that could be a really important, that could turn out to be the best bit of business we do over the summer.
Yeah, we're just past the hour mark, so we'll round it off after this question. But JB, I'm going to stick with you for it because you've been such a big fan of his. Cyril Dessers was the top scorer in the Scottish Premiership this season. A lot of opposition fans have said they don't really understand what Rangers fans' problem with Dessers is in terms of his goals across the season, the number of goals he does score. Obviously, we watch week in, week out, and we see the number of chances he misses as well. But the number of goals he does score is huge for Rangers. And I guess you take him and Cherny out of our team at this moment in time, we have very little to nothing in the way of output goals wise. What did you make of him taking that crown and being the top goal scorer in the SPFL Premiership? Where does that leave him in your mind as we head into the summer in terms of keeping him or letting him go?
Yeah, a couple of things. He scored 3 more than Simon Murray. Okay, so let's not start jumping about like this fella's a Ballon d'Or winner. Do you know what I mean? He's. Would you take Simon Murray at Rangers?
That's a no for me.
It's a hard no. Do you know what I mean? I think unfortunately we've been conditioned as Rangers fans now to kind of go that if a player hits 15, 16, 17, that it's a good achievement. I'm used to my Rangers centre forwards hitting 20 to 30 goals a season. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where we need to get to. Now, I'm not saying them players, sometimes you've got to spend a bit of money on them, but the amount of chances that he has do not translate into the amount of goals that he scored. And I think one thing I will say about him, he's robust. We've got a lot of cowards within that team. And one of the things you can say about the big man, he rocks up all the time. I get the impression he's probably a dream to manage. He's, from by all accounts, people you hear about in the training grounds, he's clinical in training and almost does everything. He's perfect. He's the perfect trainer. 100% every week, available every week. So if you're a manager, and Ferguson's proved that, because Ferguson was on the radio saying that he didn't rate them at times and saying that Rangers need to get better. Yeah, you think he started nearly every single game since he's come in there or thereabouts. So yeah, I don't think if we go into next season with I'll just absolutely launch the pod. But if you go in with James Tavernier as the guy who plays the most amount of minutes for the club next year, as he did this season, forget it. Shut the doors. Him and Dessers, if they are starting 11 players for us next year, then we're in for another season because it's not sustainable and they're proving it. We can't go into the insanity stage of keep expecting a different outcome every time. It's not going to happen. So yeah, for me, if he stays, he can stay, but he can't be our number one striker, and we can't allow him to. Let's put it this way: if he plays the same amount of minutes as Iggerman, who I think finished on 12 league goals, I'm confident Iggerman scores 6 more goals from now to the end of from that cut-off point of where all of a sudden we turned him into a left winger. Then to the end of the season, I think you're looking at probably a couple of hat-tricks and a couple of doubles easily. And again, he could have had a penalty in there as well. But again, congratulations to the big man. I think if he was to move on, he'd move on with our best wishes.
Absolutely. I have to agree with a lot of what you said there, JB, in terms of I'm not chasing him out the door, but he's definitely not our number one striker. If a decent enough bid comes in for him, I think I'm letting Dessers go. And like you say, going with best wishes on that one. But yeah, I think I didn't even realise he was that close to the top of the scoring charts until they showed it during the Hibs game yesterday, and it kind of caught me off guard a bit. But I guess some of the comments are saying it shows you there's not a good striker in the SPFL either, any other clubs. So I think that's also a fair argument. But we're over there, Mark. So I think we'll round it off there. Thank you very much to everyone for listening. Thank you very much to JB and Craig for joining us. Remember, we've got that giveaway for the new home top, so do subscribe to the TII YouTube channel and we'll pick a winner after Friday 23rd of May at 23:59. So make sure you subscribe before then. You'll be a chance of winning one of the brand new Rangers home tops. But thank you very much everyone for listening. Until next time, goodbye.